Hello, how's everyone doing? Good. Thank you for having me this afternoon to talk about dating violence, and thank you for that introduction. My name is Morgan, and I'm from Voices of Hope. Just out of curiosity, how many have heard of this agency? Good number of you, great. For those of you that don't know, we are a local crisis center. We serve Lincoln and Lancaster County, and we work to empower victims and survivors of dating violence, domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, incest, and other related forms of abuse. So we've actually been in Lincoln for 40 years providing intervention and prevention services. I'll kind of talk about in the next couple of slides what we do, but to give you an overview, a lot of our intervention services focus on crisis intervention, crisis counseling, support groups, legal, medical advocacy, meeting victims in the hospital, going through court proceedings. But my job at Voices of Hope is to really focus on violence prevention. And so I spend a lot of time in the middle schools and high schools implementing violence prevention programming, really structured around dating violence awareness, but building healthy relationships, conflict resolution, bystander intervention, sexual harassment, and sexual assault prevention. And we thought it would be nice to give just a little bit of an overview of dating violence before Respect came up here to do their performance of Cracked But Not Broken, just to kind of lay the foundation work for some of these topics. So I just kind of want to dive in, first of all, with a definition of what dating violence is, so we're all kind of on the same page. So dating violence, the definition that I like to use, is a pattern of controlling behavior that somebody uses against a girlfriend or a boyfriend, a partner. And at the core of dating abuse is power and control. So I put some important words in red here. Power and control are two very important words when we're talking about dating violence. In fact, we can't even talk about this subject without using those two important words, because that's what it really boils down to, is trying to maintain power and control over a partner. And those behaviors can manifest in a lot of different ways. I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. But pattern becomes a very important word. So kind of back to the definition that we had for bullying earlier, that these are repeated acts. And that's the same with dating violence, that somebody, is using this, there's a pattern to these behaviors. It's more than a one-time behavior, right? It's more than an oops, bad day. It's more than an argument, right? And I take a lot of time talking about that with middle school, high schoolers, and even college-age students, that arguments are bound to happen from time to time, right? How many people ever get into fights with their significant other? Yeah, it happens, right? But what I focus on as a prevention specialist is how do you use healthy conflict resolution skills, right? How can you have arguments and disagreements with your partner where you're still treating them fairly and respectfully, right? Not resorting to name calling or any violence. And so these controlling behaviors, like I said, can manifest in a lot of different ways. How many people have seen the power and control diagram before? Yeah. Staple diagram that we use, I use this in every presentation when I talk about tactics of controlling behaviors. This has been around since the 1980s. An advocate in our field, Ellen Pence, created this in the Duluth, Minnesota program. And it really illustrates what these controlling behaviors can look like. And I think a misconception often about dating violence is that it's always physical abuse. I think that's what most people think of right away. Dating violence equates to physical violence. It can. Physical violence can happen. It can be anything listed on the left-hand side here. But this power and control wheel really illustrates these other tactics of controlling behaviors. Now, I brought a copy of this Teen Power and Control Wheel. It's on the back table. This wheel has been adapted to fit a lot of different populations. This one works really well for middle, high school students. We have a generic power and control wheel, and then other types. So there's a few more on the back table, so check that out. But using things like isolation and exclusion, pulling somebody away from their friends, from their family members, or maybe it's constantly checking in with this person. Maybe it involves some form of technology abuse. Texting constantly, where are you, what are you doing, who are you with, why didn't you call me back? So controlling even through that cell phone, which actually is happening quite a bit among youth and students. Anger and emotional abuse. So this could be verbal, calling them names, putting them down, making them feel bad about themselves. But it also could be more psychological abuse, right? So making them think that they're crazy or they're making it up, or it's, convincing them that it didn't really happen. Intimidation, minimizing the behaviors then, right? Saying, well, you did something to cause this, or if you would have done this differently, I wouldn't have had to have done that. So not taking accountability for those actions. And then sometimes there's some sexual abuse that's happening. So talking about what coercion looks like, and that in a healthy relationship, your partner respects your boundaries. Wherever you draw that line, you have a dialogue about that with your partner and they respect that. So I'm using this diagram a lot to talk about those pattern of controlling behaviors. And also really emphasizing what red flags look like. What are the warning signs? And this is a big part of the education and prevention work, because I don't know if a lot of students perceive some of these red flags as warning signs. So it's really important to have a dialogue about this. And in fact, I do a lot of activities around warning signs and red flags. We'll read through a scenario and I'll have students hold up a red flag when they think it turned unhealthy, right? And you'll see that some of the students will kind of halfway through the scenario raise their hand when somebody calls her a name or something like that. But some of the students are very perceptive and raise their flags very early when the partner, wants the girlfriend to quit the soccer team so they can spend more time together, things like that. But talking about how jealousy, can often be one of those early warning signs, right? Really controlling around other people, other relationships that this person has, accusing them of things. Constantly checking up by calling or texting. I think sometimes it's perceived as, oh, look how much this person cares, when it's actually kind of a controlling behavior. Verbal abuse, telling this person what to do, what to wear, how to act, all of those controlling behaviors. And if anyone threatens to harm themselves, if you ever break up with them, that's obviously a big red flag. And it's happening pretty commonly, especially with a lot of the high school students that I'm working with. I hear this at least on a weekly basis. So really doing some education around warning signs and red flags. And of course, an important part with our prevention work is emphasizing the healthy relationships. So there's a lot happier wheel called the equality wheel, and you use this to talk about characteristics of a healthy relationship. And I'll often do like a brainstorming session with students, call out qualities of a healthy relationship. And they really come up with some insightful characteristics that I think are really important. But talking about, the obvious ones, respect and trust and safety, but also talking about accountability and responsibility for actions, right? What does negotiation and compromise look like in a relationship, partnership and commitment, intimacy, but also talking about that with open communication and those respect for boundaries is a big part of that. So just to give a quick overview of the services that we provide at Voices of Hope, we do have a 24-hour crisis line. This is the only domestic violence, sexual assault specific hotline that we have in Lancaster County. Advocates from Voices of Hope answer this crisis line. It's completely confidential. We don't ask for names on this crisis line. So that's a really great resource to pass on to others in case somebody has a question. And we also work with a lot of family members or friends who want to learn how to better support somebody. That crisis line would be a good resource to be able to talk with an advocate. We do walk-in and short-term counseling, again, like I said, legal, medical advocacy, support groups, but a big part of what we focus on is education and prevention. So some of the topics that I do at the middle school and high school level is the dating violence, healthy relationships, sexual assault prevention, conflict resolution, and a lot around bystander intervention, and how to intervene and help others as well. Okay, thanks for your attention.